Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joseph and it's great to have you here today. While doing research for another video entirely, I ran across something that I wasn't expecting. And that is what INTJs go through and act like when they're going through stress. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this is I personally have been down this rabbit hole. It's not pretty, and this picture right here, this list, is very indicative of what I personally went through. So let's talk about it. Now, the top part of this list deals with just the general idea of how an INTJ starts dealing with stress. The first thing that we naturally do in any real situation is we try to retreat from the world a little bit, get into our own minds so that we can start planning and formulating ideas to get to a solution. That's a natural process for all of us. I do it. Everybody that's an INTJ does it. I think everybody that has that introverted intuition does it. It's a function that we have of wanting to retreat into our own minds to start processing things naturally. And that's what this starts talking about. And it goes with retire to a private place and think about a problem until the INTJ has formulated a complete plan for solving it. That is, again, natural. It's a natural reaction for INTJs, including trying to maintain a high degree of quality in the solution. That is also indicative of an INTJ. We naturally want to try and get a solution to a problem that solves the problem with a very high degree of quality, a very high degree of not having another problem rise up from the solution. It's part of who we are. I've done it. I'm sure that if you're an INTJ, you have done it before too. Next, it goes on to talk about criticize others' ideas, particularly if they involve compromising quality. I've probably done that at least once. Again, though, this is just the baseline of stress. So if you've done that, you're just following more to what we as INTJs naturally do. The final one is make errors a fact or pursue ideas that are unrealistic. I have probably done that as well too. To an extent, when under stress, I've made leaps in logic that weren't quite right, and I've had to backtrack off of them to get a correct answer. And sometimes I've tried to do things that are a little unrealistic, but I don't remember doing that. This top half of the list, though, is only something I want to just touch on because the majority of us have probably gone through it. The bottom half is what I really want to get into, where things start to get really dangerous for us. The bottom half of this list starts off with, however, eventually, if their mind and space themselves becomes too stressful, they may seek to escape just as extremely back in the other direction. Under extreme stress, fatigue, or illness, the INTJ's shadow may appear, which they call an unhealthy ESFP. Now, the characteristics of this going back the other way for an INTJ, I have personally been through, and it's very, very dangerous for us. And we'll start with the top line of doing things to excess. When I was under stress, I did things a little bit to excess, but it was work. I was working too much. Now, to paint a picture of the kind of level of stress that I'm talking about, I want you to imagine going into work, day in, day out, putting in a little bit of overtime each day, but never ever being able to catch up on work. Always constantly coming into work, having your own regular workload just burying you, as well as having to deal with other things such as things that your boss would normally do and helping others in other areas that were related to you. Now, all of that getting done in the span of a day, trying to do all of that, and never seeing an end to it or a reduction in it, always seeing it at the same level of being just above your head in how much you have to do. That kind of level of stress constantly, day in, day out, for over a month. That's the kind of workload, kind of stress that I'm talking about that I personally went through. Now, the next thing that's on this list is it talks about us acting very impulsively and taking on more projects than we could hope to accomplish. And that gets back to what I was talking about with the amount of stress that I personally was under. Now, it's not necessarily that I had a way of getting away from all that workload, because I didn't, but I kept trying to reach out to other things to do to try and kind of mini escape from it. But in that regard, I was taking on other tasks that I really shouldn't have been. I was taking on way too much. I was taking on too much workload to possibly conceivably get it all done. And then the next thing they talk about is expressing emotions in an intensive and uncontrolled way. I have also personally done this, and it was not pretty when I did it. It was something where I would shout at someone or say something very gruffly, very roughly, that I had no intention or need to do so in that way. It was wrong of me, but it was because of the stress and workload that I was under that I could not escape. I didn't mentally see a way out. And kind of how it plays out as an INTJ is what they talk about a little later on here. And actually, I should get to that first. Next thing on the list is being very sensitive to criticism. Now, again, being under stress, we as INTJs are going to start lashing out because we're not getting a chance to retreat from the world, to get onto our headspace, to plan things out. What it amounts to is getting stuck in the problem. And I am jumping ahead of myself, because down in the list they talk about getting stuck on the problem. It's coupled down here: becoming preoccupied with the cause of their stress and having trouble focusing their energy on work. Legitimately getting stuck on the problem without being able to formulate a plan to get to a solution. That's where the real stress for INTJs comes from, is getting overburdened with all sorts of different problems and not being able to get past those problems into the planning phase. Now, something else they say here is asking for lots of information that is irrelevant. I believe that I did that, but I don't personally remember doing that specifically. Another thing this list is talking about is that we gather details to support our self-destructive behavior and attack our self-image. Now, I have done that. What it came down to is, as I was overworking myself and overdoing what I should be doing, I started worrying about not being able to get it all done, more or less telling myself that I was incapable of getting it done, and falling back to the faults of the reason why I couldn't get done is because I didn't have the skill set for it, or I didn't have enough people to do it, or I just could not do it because I had too many other things going on. I was literally self-destructing, self-imploding on myself, which is, again, not healthy in the least. One thing that I jumped over that I want to go back to very briefly is being very sensitive to criticism when you're in this state of being overstressed. Imagine, if you will, a needle and a gigantic mirror. Whatever mirror you have in your house, imagine that mirror and a needle. And that needle, you just touch to the glass of the mirror and the whole mirror shatters. That's the kind of sensitivity to criticism that an INTJ goes through when under this level of stress. It is literally, the criticism is the needle and you're the mirror, and that needle just barely touches the mirror and the mirror just shatters. Your self-image becomes so raw when under that level of stress. And for me, it did. that just the slightest bit of criticism I took very, very personally, more personally than I should have, and wasn't a large amount of criticism. It was something very, very, very small based around the job at hand. It was very small. And to have just any criticism at the time when I was trying very hard and trying to produce at a higher quality just shattered me. Now we're at the bottom of the list, and we're just going to cover these last two briefly. The first one is mentally reviews issues which lead to sleepless nights. Now that backs up to one of the previous statements. And essentially, again, as an INTJ, we naturally want to go into the planning phase to solve a problem. But what we get stuck on with having way too many problems to try and solve is the problems themselves. We have to constantly review them mentally to try and figure out, can I do this, can I do that, are any of these pieces actually fitting together? Something else that INTJs do, we try to fit pieces together logically, and sometimes there is absolutely no logic to be found in some situations. But with all these problems, we try to fit them together. I try to fit them together to get them all to work, to make things get to a solution, almost bypassing the planning step altogether just to get a solution, get rid of the problems at hand. Now, the last thing is with chronic stress, we become irritable, tired, tense, or angry. And I had all of those symptoms where I was tired the vast majority of the time. I was tense and irritable because I was under so much stress. And I got angry and was snapping at people for no good reason other than it was directly related to the stress. Now, if you're an INTJ and you see any of these signs in your own personal self, in what you're going through right now, I urge you, very seriously urge you, to find some way to get away from the stress. Whether it's listening to music, going for a walk by yourself in the park, those are things that personally help me. Whatever personally helps you, either do that or ask somebody for help. Don't ride through this stress alone. It is not healthy. It's very dangerous. I say this from experience. I do not want anybody going through this level of stress because it's very unhealthy. And that's part of the reason why I made this video, is to tell you, yes, I've been there, I've done that. There is a way out. I've gotten out myself. Don't sit in the stress. Alright, that does it for today's video. If you found this informative, if you have any questions about what I personally went through, or you want to share your own personal story of how you went through stress, drop a comment in the comments section of this video below. Also, while you're here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to continue to do some videos like this from time to time, mixed in with my funny stuff because I know everybody likes that. But again, thank you so much for watching today's video. Stay safe out there, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.